Are you currently caught in the middle of two different worlds? On one hand, you are taking care of kids, raising them up to be amazing adults. And on the other, you are taking care of your aging and or disabled parents. And this is all happening at the same time. And it feels very chaotic. You're not sure where to look. And it can really cause both emotional and financial strain on you. If this is you, you are part of a growing population, and we have named you guys the sandwich generation, which I'm sure you have heard that in the past. It means being sandwiched between two other generations while you're just trying not to sink, right? And so today we're going to break down some critical things that you need to keep in mind if you're in this generation. Now, obviously, there are plenty of emotional things that I won't go into because I'm not a therapist. But I am going to go into some things financially you need to keep in mind to keep yourself on track. And not just that, to take care of your family because they are relying on you. So you want to make sure that you're doing things properly and that you're keeping financially fit as well as physically fit, right? You don't want to let yourself go because then you can't take care of anybody. Same thing comes with finances. So all of this is based on an article I read from Fidelity. That will be listed in the description below if you are interested in taking a look at that. And we will jump into that topic in just a second. Hopefully that's interesting to you. Now, before we do, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Lisa. I've been a financial advisor for almost 15 years, and I help people get to financial freedom as quickly as possible. And as we're working together, I help them get around some common mistakes that can impede them from getting to their goals fast, right? That's what we want to do is we want to get to that financial independence as quickly as possible. And we don't need those pesky mistakes getting in the way. So I've seen a lot and I help people get through that as much as possible. Okay. So for rule number one, they talked to this CFP at Fidelity named Ann Dowd. And basically what she says, the rule number one is that you have to prioritize yourself in your planning. Is that whole idea of putting your own mask on first before you help others. We've heard that a million times in the plane, and this goes in hand here. And what she suggests is three immediate steps. And of course, I'll give my opinion on this too. She says that you want to have enough emergency fund for you to provide liquidity, to give you some flexibility. I totally agree with that. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I believe having a solid emergency fund and liquidity is really important for financial freedom. The other is to pay down high interest debt, which she probably means by this is like credit card debt, maybe student loan payments, things not your house necessarily, but other high interest debt. And that's always good for your planning. It just gets you in a better mind space if that's paid off. It just puts you in a better position, cash flow wise and otherwise. So I totally agree with that. And she also says you need to prioritize your retirement above all else. Now, it sounds harsh, and I agree it sounds harsh. And do I always do this? Maybe not. You know, sometimes we put ourselves in the backseat while we're taking care of other people. However, you are responsible for your loved ones. And you are also responsible for yourself and your financial future in keeping healthy. Just the same way that you don't want to become physically unfit during times like this, which I know is easy to do. You want to keep fit, you want to keep exercise, you want to keep mobility, you want to keep healthy, because otherwise you can't be there for your family. The same goes for your finances. If you are constantly worried about debt that you have to pay off, issues that are coming up, worried about retirement goals not being completed by not getting there, that is going to be a huge mental strain on you and is going to impede you from doing the best for both your kids and your parents. So you do want to prioritize yourself first. Make sure you are planning for retirement, planning for your financial freedom, putting away, saving, using those 401ks, using what's available to you. If you are not sure, reach out to a financial advisor like myself or somebody else to help you put that together, put a plan together, have a roadmap, right? That's really important. Another thing that they highlight in this article, which I think is really important, is knowing more and having those difficult conversations. So this is not really for your kids, although eventually you'll want to have these conversations with your kids once they're adults. Maybe even adult, maybe even older teenagers might be important to have this conversation depending on circumstances and other things. But you want to talk to your parents early about medical and financial issues. You want to talk to them. Do they have a trust? Do they have investment accounts? Who handles their investments? Who handles their planning? What are they living off of? And when we talk about the sandwich generation, oftentimes it's seen as you are financially necessarily taking care of people, maybe your parents or your in laws or somebody older in your family. However, that's not always the case. Sometimes the older generation that you're taking care of has their own finances, but doesn't know how to access them, needs help with that, needs help with a lot of other physical and other things that you're taking care of. So you want to have those conversations like Social Security, pensions, the home that they're living in. What is the cost that they need? Are they paying their bills on time? Is their house paid off, or they still have a mortgage on it? All those different things you need to know. And so I would sit down and have at least one, if not two, preliminary conversations about this, just kind of get a sense of what they've done in terms of planning, in terms of things that you need to know. And I would say if you're helping them out, don't be afraid to ask those questions. Ask about a trust, ask about wills, ask about, payments and investment accounts. They will be appreciative of it. I know we all think that they think that we are asking these questions because we just can't wait to get our hands on their money through inheritance. That's not the case. They know that you need to know what's going on. If you just say, I love you, but I want to make sure that I'm taking care of you the best way I can, I need to ask these questions so I know what's going on, just in case something happens, especially if they're older and they start to go into mental decline. You need to understand this stuff. And you might even need to be a power of attorney, or one of your siblings or somebody needs to be in that position before that happens. So you do need to have these conversations early. Another thing to consider are increasing expenses for your kids. Now, let's say your kids are 12 or 13. You might not be thinking about college, but college is quite expensive. The average college expense of out-of-state tuition is about $27,000. I would say that's low from what I've been hearing. So you do want to look into college planning as early as possible. So again, that's not a burden on you. If you are not saving for it outside of what you plan on paying for it, that's going to hurt your cash flow, which could also hurt your cash flow when it comes to helping parents if you are financially helping them. So you don't want two things necessarily coming in and hurting your cash flow. So you might utilize a 529 plan. Of course, Fidelity is saying to use a 529 plan because they do 529 plans, but you can also look at brokerage accounts or other vehicles that might work better in terms of a 529 plan, because that 529 plan is great in terms of tax savings. Sometimes people are not super happy with the rules around a 529 plan, like it can only be used for education, those kind of things. If you want more flexibility on what the funds are being used for, maybe a brokerage account or some other kind of account might be better. Also, maximizing HSA accounts. So a lot of people still think that an FSA and an HSA are the same thing. They're not. HSA accounts, you can maximize your inputs. Also, a lot of times if they're offered through your work, you get a company contribution, which is great. And essentially you get to put money in there. And if you don't use it by the end of the year, it actually builds and accumulates. Unlike an FSA where you have to use it by the end of the year. And I know a lot of people aren't super happy about that, but you do get some tax benefit by putting into an HSA, also an FSA, but an HSA I think is a better fit for most people. And so that if there is a medical emergency or something down the line, you have those funds to help with your kids that are growing up. So that helps with just that mental fatigue we get from worrying about what could happen for things. Having some healthcare expenses paid for in advance, or at least some money put away in advance for that, is a really good thing to help on the emotional and mental side when it comes to financial stability. So in the last thing that they touch on, which I think is really important too, is if you are an important part of people's lives, kids, spouse, parents, in-laws, whoever this is that is sandwiching you, essentially. Your spouse wouldn't, because he or she is probably in your own generation, but whoever is reliant on you is going to need some help if something happens to you. So you do want to take this time to look at, life insurance, disability insurance, what's offered, what's covered, because you are that rock for them. And you want to make sure that you're able to help them if something else happens to you, which we really hope doesn't happen, but we want to be prepared for that. So they do talk about that. And I think that that's really important. So, this was a lot that I threw at you, but I think the biggest thing to take away from this article and just from this talk in general is that you do need to take care of yourself. A lot of times we keep saying, we'll get to it. This is more important. I've got to take care of my parents. I've got to take care of my kids, and I'll get there. Well, what happens is that you put yourself in a bad place for when you get started, and maybe you never get that time. I mean, unfortunately, as kids get older, they're having a harder time finding a job after school, and they need help with their student loans. And things continue to be expensive for kids a lot longer, and parents and people are living a lot longer as well. So you could be in this situation for 10, 15 years, which I know that's horrifying if you're stressed out about it. I'm sorry to put that out there, but it's true. And you don't want to put your planning on hold for 10 to 15 years. You need to take care of yourself piece by piece. And so I think that if you take some time every quarter to just look at your plan, look at your cash flow, do kind of a financial check-in, and keep yourself financially fit, just like physically fit, you will be in a much better place for yourself, for your sanity, and for your entire family. So I hope this helps. Until next time, stay strong out there, be kind to one another, be safe, and we will see you on the next video. Bye-bye.